Today we're going to talk about building and using a 42-inch long hot wire bow saw for cutting styrofoam board. I have a particular requirement to have a shape made out of styrofoam for a project I'm working on where I need to mold some fiberglass. When the project originally started out, I tried to use a piece of cardboard shaped in the way that I wanted to support the fiberglass. Unfortunately, I found that this didn't work very well. As you can see, it has two flat surfaces of decreasing width. And I'm not sure why this didn't work, other than my drawings were two-dimensional. But this is a three-dimensional piece of board, so it didn't fold and form the way that I thought it should. So I started out with this, found that it did not work. And I eventually moved to using styrofoam, and after several steps, I wound up being able to produce a shape like this. Now, this is not perfect, it's not pretty by any means, but it does have the basic shape that I need, and I believe it will function for my purposes. So, let's go through the steps first of how the hot wire knife was built. First of all, everything that I know, I've learned off the internet. All this information is available off the internet, and all I've done is modified it for my particular needs. So let's take this off and let's look at the actual bow saw itself. The first thing the bow saw needed was a power supply. I started off with a single 25.2 volt 2 amp transformer from Radio Shack. I used it for about 20 to 30 minutes and then the transformer failed. I heard a pop, a little smoke, and it's done. So I then went to two power transformers wired in parallel. And as you can see, the wiring's pretty straightforward. Simply wire it up in parallel. Those are the outputs. Here are the inputs. As you can see, I've got the three wires together here, two going into the transformer. This wire is from the house current. The control for the transformer is a simple dimmer switch purchased again at Nuts and Bolts on Metcalf here in Overland Park. Now, so let's set this aside and then let's look at the actual bow. Okay, I made the bow out of a scrap piece of 2x4. Using my table saw, I took the 2x4, I cut it to the right thickness, and then I cut slots out. I used some leftover nuts and bolts and a couple fender washers, and also cut the vertical pieces, put in some eye bolts, and stretched a piece of stainless steel wire between the ends. One thing you might note is that these wire nuts are ceramic. I don't know if this is exactly necessary, but I thought that since this wire was going to be getting very hot, I thought it would make sense to have these wire nuts be made out of ceramic rather than plastic. The top of the bow is pretty simple. Again, some eye bolts screwed into the wood, a leftover rubber bungee cord that I had, and it was a little bit short, so I put some wire in and then bent the wire around to get the appropriate tension that I was looking for. The wire here, again, bought at Nuts and Bolts, just simple lamp cord. So let's talk about the actual wire that is going to do the cutting, that runs on the bottom side of the bow here. This wire is stainless steel. A lot of the articles recommend music wire or wire for a guitar. Those pieces I tried to find that were not long enough for my needs, so I went to Nuts and Bolts and purchased this stainless steel wire. It's solid. It's 19 gauge. It worked really well. I tried it, but it didn't get hot enough, and I would try something thinner. So I went back and I purchased this wire, which is not solid, it's stranded, and it's designed for the use in hanging pictures. But it's stainless steel, it's what I'm using, it seems to work pretty well. You may have to experiment a little bit depending upon how much power you have and the length of your wire to make sure that you get the temperature that you need. Now, the articles on the internet indicate that their wire glows red hot. I haven't been able to achieve that, but what I have works pretty well, as you will see. There are also an article that talks about using 3 transformers rather than 2, but again, the 2 that I'm using seem to work pretty well. Now we're actually going to try to cut this piece of styrofoam. There's a mark, as noted earlier, down the side here that marks the 4 inches that we want to cut off. I'm going to have some help because it takes, in this case, for this type of cut, it takes 2 people to move the bow vertically. If I had a jig, I could do this by myself, but this turns out just to be the easiest way to do this. So let's go ahead and take this. And now what you're going to see, all we're going to do is we're going to follow this line, and it's going to hang up on this. It may not be noticeable, but it sure is when you operate it. So let's go, and you'll see how quickly, and I'm really wavering on this, but here we go. I'm going to come through. That's all there is to it. You see how quickly I cut, and got a little smoke coming off from the remnants. And really, that's all there is to it.